Welcome to Spark Sessions. We are Spark AI. We partner with agencies to help them go from individual use of AI to team-wide rewiring with AI. We do this through a 10-week sprint called the AI Accelerator, which is role-specific training for creatives, strategy, and client services teams, where we show them how to use AI across the team to be more efficient, but more importantly, do even better work. We also work with the leadership team to develop the AI strategy and support them on the business change transformation piece that always accompanies this type of work. I work specifically on the leadership and client services streams, and we work with independents like JKR to network agencies like Publicis. Our session title today is Efficient Teams from Fragmented Tools to Unified AI Workstreams. And I'm delighted to say that my guest today is Chris Murphy, founder and MD of Tuncarp. I'm Emma Jackson, or EJ if we've met. I'm an award-winning prompt engineer and exec producer, and helping agencies alongside producing AI activations is my jam. And I can talk about this all day. I've got a packed 30 minutes for you though, so grab a coffee or a sandwich and let's go. Tuncarp are a 50-person agency based in the Philippines, and that's 50 creatives working across CX and AI, working for brands and white labeling for network agencies. Chris, let's jump in. Does that about sum up your positioning?
Yeah, that's exactly it. So mixture of product, CX, and obviously AI is what everybody is talking about these days. So integrating that into the workflows as well.
Absolutely. So workflows is something that we talk about a lot with our clients, and that transformation piece from going to what used to work before and gets a bit more fragmented once you start introducing new technologies and new ways of doing things into really unifying those AI work streams. But before we kick into our content, I'd just like to talk about what your aha moment was with AI. Mine was a super weird one. About 4 years ago, I was working on a personality-based product for a big global company. And my aha moment was when it started to make me laugh, and when I started to see how it could pull together disparate parts of information when guided carefully enough and actually respond in a way that felt very human and very natural. What was your aha moment?
Well, I think it came at the end of 2022 when there were tools like Jasper and obviously ChatGPT dropped, and I started playing around with them, a little bit obsessive over them, to be completely honest. And I asked the agency people at the moment, like, what do you think of AI? And like unilaterally across the agency, everyone's like, we don't like it, we're not using it. But in around April 2023, we hired our first AI prompt engineer. It was probably too early overall because the tools weren't ready, and like the work at that point was terrible. You saw Will Smith with spaghetti, but it was a really cool learning process. Kept experimenting, kept playing, and it was in May of last year that we did a marketing piece for Tuncarp, and the video output came back from the team, and I looked at it, I was like, do you know what? It's about 80% there overall in terms of like quality. So at that point, it was like, let's build a team around this of native prompt engineers with creatives to sort of really get into the tools. And we took that to our clients in around August, September last year with examples of work that we'd done with AI only, almost to see if they could tell the difference. And then it all went from there really, and we started experimenting more, playing with the tools. And now we've got a team of 15, 16 that are AI only.
Amazing. Yeah, that's a really good point actually, which I don't think you know until you're deep in it, working with AI, because I've definitely started working on activations before we've had the update to the tools that will actually result in us being able to do the thing that we really want to do. So we've had to start and looking at the AI model companies and really kind of mapping out what are they going to be able to do next, and kind of counting on updates in order to come in order to do those last little bits, because it does move so fast. Over a 6-month project, there were 5 major updates to an LLM that reduced cost by 6 times, increased capability. You can't really sit still on this at all, can you?
It's a space race, to be honest. Every day there are new tools dropping. Our AI content lead, he went on holiday for a couple of weeks, and he came back into the office last week, and he said, I feel so out of touch. He just wondered like about all the new tools that had dropped in, so we had to spend a couple of days catching up. But it also affects the client work that you do as well. So we've had a project, we worked on it for like 3 or 4 weeks, and we're just 2 days away from launch, and then a new model drops. And all of a sudden, the work that you've done is not good enough anymore. So you have to frantically reprompt and redo everything. But that's sort of the way we are, because it's going to be every week, every couple of weeks that it improves.
Yeah, it's a new way of working, but I think that sounds quite scary to some people. But what's saying the best time to buy a house or plant a tree was 100 years ago. The next best time is today. You just have to start messing about and getting into it. So on that note, shall we start talking about work streams? Because I believe that you have something quite special to show us today, and demo for us as well.
Yeah, would love to. So like I said, our team, we really sort of put investment into it in September. We started advertising for AI prompt engineers, and we had working retainers with clients in place to do production work. Now, when we got started, there were so many models that we were using in the production process. You had to use 3 or 4 for images. You had to use another couple for videos, because the video models do different things well. Some are better at people, some are better at movement, some are better with physical objects. And it was that learning process that went on, but it was complicated. If you went on LinkedIn now, you'd see 10 posts of somebody pretending that it's just click a button and you get marketing ready outputs, but it really isn't that. And it is that process of playing with the tools and understanding what works that helps you create that right process. So initially we were using tools like Fowl.ai, which is an aggregator, it has all of the best tools from the US, but equally the Chinese models as well. But it's not the most useful system when it comes to AI production, because you'll have to have multiple different tabs open and you'll have to be jumping between screens. And it's cool when you're just playing around and experimenting, but when you're creating 1,000 images for a brand campaign, it's not manageable and you just lose track. Yeah. So what our team did is they built out a tool that enabled them to access all of the latest models, but work in a way that made it easier for them. So that's what I'd love to take you through today. So
this is a bespoke tool that you've built to facilitate your ways of working.
Yeah, it's a model that we've built on top of the latest LLMs from the US and also China. And we've thought about the way that our teams work in production through the briefing process, shaping the brief, how that can be guided, what information you may or may not have, how you actually go through generate those images, how you link the references so that you get consistency in a campaign, and then how that would go into a video production process. Also showing how the approval process works, because it's no good sort of just having the assets. Half of the problem in agencies is, how does my creative director see this? How do they give feedback? And then also, how do you bring the clients into that process as well? So it can
amazing. I think that accountability piece, the human in the loop, is the most important part of this technology, because it's about control, it's about quality, and it's about being accountable for the outputs, right?
100%. And like AI won't work unless you have that brand governance and also those approval mechanisms in place. So let me just log in to the tool. So what we have here is what we call creative workspace. The idea is that you can get all of the assets that you need end to end. So almost acting like a tool that is a production house. So how do people want to create work today? Now, ultimately, most people are familiar with ChatGPT or Claude, and they want to do written briefs. Claude Design dropped last week as well, so that's going to be a future way of working, but it's ultimately going to be prompts that guide you through. So we have that in a natural language element. People can go in, you can upload a brief. So if a client has sent you something, you can upload that. If there's information missing, the tool will then sort of get that out of you in the questioning process. You can link it to brand guidelines, and maybe I just flash that up first. So one of the big problems that you have when you're generating now is it needs to be on brand. And as an agency, when you're working with multiple different brands, like Claude or ChatGPT will have limited memory space. So you need to make sure that everything you're prompting is already aware of what you've got out there. So that could be everything from the colors, and this is just an example one that we have here, the colors that you have, the fonts that you would need to have, the voice, the tone, also reference images. You could upload existing marketing pieces, and then have instructions around what must come through in this brand identity and what you don't want to come through, and that can sit across photography, color, layouts. If you're working with financial services or pharmaceutical companies, there's obviously a lot of legal guidelines that you need to have included. But this accompanies you when you're going through that generation process.
Right.
So the other element that's really cool in agencies is you don't always want to start from scratch. You have certain clients where you are creating social assets or email templates or banners. You want to have them built out in ready-built templates, for example. So if it was a campaign launch kit, you could be able to go through and build out a conversational element there to be able to start that chat process. If I jump into in Blue Peter Speak one that I built earlier to show that how this process works. Essentially, once you've started on that process, you can go through and see that you've asked for that brief. It's going to come back to you with elements of questions. So you may have all of the information that you need from the client, but sometimes you don't get that, and you have to be guided. Well, probably like 80% of the time, you don't have all of the information that could potentially work off the back of it there. So you want to make sure that it comes out, and that can be styles of the photography, the colors that go along with it, the angles that one. You can equally choose how polished or how natural you want it to film. And the briefing mechanism or agent will help you along with that process by guiding you and asking the questions until it feels confident enough to be able to go through and generate the assets. And I think that's key for creatives because it makes sure that all of the information is captured up front before you move into the actual generation process. So these are some example assets that we generated in the shoe space for retail. Now, when you're working this out, there is a canvas mode that essentially allows you to link the hero visuals between. So with the hero visual that's been generated, you can see the prompt that was used, you can see the model. You may want to generate that into different formats, different sizes.
So does this mean that you can change models between these modular aspects of this workflow?
Yeah, that's a really cool question, and also a key feature here, for example. So if we wanted to do that, we would be able to add in two cards here, for example, where we have two images, and we'd be able to say Nano Banana 2, for example, or the new GPT image, and we'd be able to say Japanese sneaker street. And we could post that in. Now the tool, we can do that same prompt here, resolution 1K. You can see you've got the various different ratios that you could generate it, and you can show it in the resolution. You can pick how many variations that you want to have, but I think that's fine for now. You can see there's an automatic prompt that comes out of this where it recommends brand guidelines from the brand guardian to make sure that it is on track for you.
Amazing.
And then we can just click generate on those elements there, and we can wait for those to generate here. Now, the really cool thing here is that you can test out different models that would be
and see
working.
because I mean they all kind of jostle for position in terms of what they can do, but there are sometimes when this model is better for different nationalities or different cultures, and this model just does this type of photography better, but you only really know that if you've got a compare and contrast tool like this, which is amazing that you can do it side by side.
Yep. So you can see that Nano Banana has won the speed race in terms of generation. And the image that came back is pretty on point to the brief. Obviously, if we had tighter brand guidelines, we could upload reference images as well from previous campaigns, or equally streets in Tokyo that we thought would work well. We will come back to GPT later. I think this was the new product, so it might be a little bit slower overall. But the idea is that you can group the different versions, and you'd be able to help shape them. You'd be able to add in and tweak the images that you generated. You could also add in content if that was something that you wanted to have up as well. So once you've gone through and created these assets, we want to get approval. Now, this can be either within the agency, or if we thought they were client ready, we'd be able to have that element as well. So we have team settings here within, where we've got internal and external stakeholders. That could be your creative director, the designers. They can access certain projects. So when we're generating work, projects are created, and we can set the rules around that as well. So from there, once you're on the canvas, you can actually send these elements for approval. So we're happy with the output, and we're going to send them for approval. And within each project, you have a chat mechanism. One of the pain points in agency is the review process, whether it is review through email, Framer, Slack, Teams, even WhatsApp, probably with some clients is something that we have to use. But essentially, we have a chat function of all of the stakeholders that are across the chat, can be internal or external. There's an AI assistant as well who picks up on tasks that are generated and adds them to people's task backlog as well. Once
how does it pick up on the tasks that people need?
So it's intuitive. Based on what's posted, it will recognize there's a new review for Chris, for example, to go through and see it, and then they will allocate that task. So that could be your creative director, and then they would receive there's various mechanisms that you can go through with, like, for example, a Tinder approval mechanism in terms of left and right. If you reject, there's a comment section where you can go through and give actual feedback on the image. If you're looking at 1,000 images that want to go through as well, there is a grid function here so that you can go through and select the items that you want to go through. And you can build out workflows. So this is all customizable for the approval workflows that you want, and also what would happen to this image next. So we want to use this as a base for video generation. That's also something that can happen off the back of it as well. So the idea is that all within one creative workspace, you can remove some of the pain points that would exist in an agency. The other elements which are sort of key, making sure that it properly integrates into various systems, whether that's Google Drive or Microsoft Teams for the sharing of the assets once they are approved, pushing threads into Slack, and the file storage. We work with clients, and they use a whole range of project management softwares and file storage softwares, and that's something that is equally as key. The final element, I think, is like from a IP point of view, making sure that the assets are generated with the right safety mechanisms as well. So some of the models have inbuilt watermarks built into them in terms of when they're generated across, and that's something that is absolutely key. So for example, if I were to post this on social and it was generated via Nano Banana SCR to market as an AI asset, might also come up. But equally, we want to make sure that we're not infringing on any IP licenses. So during the prompting process, if you were to name characters where there could be IP infringement, if you were to upload faces, for example, where there could also be IP infringement, it picks up on that. The other really important element that we should all be aware of during this generation process is the changing regulations coming in August around watermarking and making sure that there are the right cryptographic watermarks included in images to make sure that there is the transparent sort of announcement of I have used AI, because that's going to be the next stage to avoid sort of the confusion with people. So that's something that's built into the tool during the generation process.
Well, I also love that you've baked in this IP protection. Ethics is something that we talk about a lot, and obviously there's a lot of court cases going on at the moment about IP still, that's still to be settled. There's a lot of regulations that are being talked about, and there's a lot of laws that may or may not be passed. And roughly, there's some stark differences between the US, the UK, Europe, Asia. Like, there's quite a lot of differences, and I think clients, it's something that they should be rightfully quite leery about, not only because ethical work is important, but also because of the possible ramifications down the line, could be extremely embarrassing for them and the guardianship that they have over the brands in their control. Yeah. Is that something that belongs to your AI specialist in the agency? I know you mentioned someone who's responsible for AI tool usage as well. Does that fall under their remit as well, of looking like what's coming down the line? What do we need to be cautious of? How should people be using AI that's ethical and keeps us safe?
Yeah, so we've got an AI content lead whose job is to sort of stay across all of the latest drops in the AI tooling space, experiment with them super quickly and find out what works. If we need to get that tool and pay that license fee to get it into the agency or integrate it into this creative workstation, that's something we're on top of. We are lucky enough to have a creative technologist on the team who has a law background. So he's actually across all of the latest AI IP issues. And I think this is the biggest question I come up against when I am talking to marketing teams, because there's several reasons why they want this. Yeah, AI is cool, and you can do some amazing output, and it's more efficient. There are cost levers that you can pull attached to it. But the biggest blocker at the moment is risk, because big companies do not want to open themselves up to IP violations with the marketing content that they are producing. So some of the models have this built in, and they mark it for commercial usage. But some of the other models, the training that they went through in order to create output, particularly in some of the models from Asia, is a little bit more loose, is probably the best way to put it. So there is some risk, and you saw with like the launch of Seagance 2, it was delayed by a couple of months whilst they tightened up the IP safety mechanisms. So with our prompting mechanism, you can actually go through, the way an agency would be able to do this is to build out the right MCP, MDF structures when generating that can always reference back to make sure that the IP safety mechanisms are built in there as well. It can either be upfront to check that the prompts are not going to violate IP mechanisms. It can be afterwards through scanning of images and scanning of video to make sure that they aren't violating real life characters. It can be through the watermarking process off the back of it as well.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting, because it also occurs to me that the way you've built this system, and because it's your bespoke system, and because this has been built in, and you can go back and basically analyze the prompts, that gives you an auditable trail that if you needed to, you could say to a client, this is how the sausage was made. We can show our bit. Obviously, you can't show the inside of the commercial models that you use. That's another bit, but you can say this was our bit, this was your bit, and we can audit that.
Yeah. So you can export the content and the elements. You can also export the data into a CSV. And what that does is it tracks the prompts that we use, the model that was used. So say, for example, a client does have a problem 2-3 months down the line where somebody says, hey, that's my character, my talent that I use. You would be able to show reference of the prompt that was used, the time that it was generated, and the model to give yourself a little bit more protection. So that's definitely something that is super crucial as well.
I love that. It's super, like having that clarity as well, I think is really important. There's a couple of things that occurred to me as you were talking. It's such an impressive, agile system. How long did this take? I say that in the full knowledge that you probably iterate and tweak it fairly often for, to get the best performance and optimize it. How long did it take to get to something where you were getting pretty usable assets out of it?
Yeah. So the team really started working in September. Most of our hires in the AI team were August. We played around with the aggregators there, and then maybe over the Christmas period, a couple of the team built this out just as a tool for them to use. They were so fed up of jumping between systems that they built this. And I'd say in about 4 weeks, we had something that was really cool, a working MVP that could go through and do generation. And here we are probably 3 months later, and it's turning into a fairly robust creative operating system. So this can be done. It's understanding the workflows. Everybody's talking about vibe coding at the moment. It's just understanding what you want the tool to be used for, and then defining out those journeys.
Well, that's a really good point as well. So how did you decide what to start with? Was it team driven or was it commercially driven?
This was team driven. So this was, I need to create a campaign. So to do a video, there was a 3-minute video that we did last year. It required 8,000 images and 1,500 videos. And you can imagine that's a lot of assets for the team to stay on top of, especially when you're working with a client in that production process. So they built this to make their life easier. How can I generate all of the images that I need? How can I turn it into video footage? How can I get the approvals? And how can I sort of make my life easier? And I think that's what AI is here to do. Right? Yes, we're going to be able to do great output, but we need to understand the tools and how we can piece them together to make our life easier, both for us internally, but then equally for clients. And now what we've got is an awesome creative workstation where we have access to all of the latest tools, and it simplifies that process. But it was team-led, which I think is awesome.
I mean, the dream, like that's amazing.
Yeah.
And something else also that occurred to me, I was at a prompt engineering conference the other day, and Amazon gave a really interesting chat from one of their chief, we don't call them prompt engineers anymore, we call them context engineers. And he said that their starting point, and this is actually very typical of Amazon if you take it right back to their brand and their core proposition, they start with token use on any tool that they're looking to build or any process. And I thought that was so interesting because I work with creative agencies. It's all about the idea. But for a huge company like that actually makes sense, because if they build a tool, so many people that will get used so many times by so many people that I guess that has to be one of their starting blocks. With you, with how many models that you're using, do you track token use? Do you look at it? Is it under scrutiny to reduce, or is that just cost of doing business now? This is something that we build into our business model, that we need space, we need a range, a buffer. How do you approach that?
So it's definitely being tracked. My finance lady is not very happy most of the time, but it is the cost of doing business, because to access the models, you need to have the credits to be able to explore and experiment. Now, some of the models are more expensive than others, like the UC-Dux model. It is expensive to generate 10 seconds of footage. But to do a video, you've got to look at the production cost that you would have saved if you're doing real world shoots, and just have it built into the budgets. Track them, charge it back to clients, including in the hourly rate card, however you want to set that up, I think is absolutely key. One of the cool things though, with the AI prompt engineers, FDEs, creative technologists, whatever they have as a job title, is they want the creative license to have unlimited credits. And I'm not saying that credits are a perk in a job, but for them to be able to have access to the latest tools and just play around, it's fun. It's almost like a computer game overall, with all of the new models coming in and creating cool stuff. And that's sort of the attitude that we have to it. It's use it, spend the credits, we'll do some great work, and we'll figure out the creative production process in the meantime.
That's amazing. And so do you feel now that the agency is at a point where those micro and sometimes macro innovations are part of the job, have now reached the point where it feels like it's baked in? Or do you still find that you have to carve out time to look to get people together to look at specific things that might have been identified as a problem or a challenge or an expansion for the agency?
It's constant. You have to stay on top of it because the models are updating all the time. Last year, a big focus of myself and the leadership team was on creative AI, which is videos, statics, campaign assets. And we spent a lot of time thinking about the right shape of the team, the right people that we would need, the tools that would be needed to deliver that. Now, I also think that we're pivoting across to do that in the CX and product space. Because whilst the tools weren't ready a couple of months ago, since February with Claude Skills and our Claude Design, that's going to be affected in the CX, UX, UI, and product design space. So I think like agency owners and senior leaders in the agency need to be on top of this. They need to understand all of the tools that are dropping in and then help their team either get access to the right training or find the right resources online to upskill them. I think that's our responsibility to make sure that our agencies continue to do the best work.
Yeah. Chris, I love that. I could talk to you about this all day, but we're running out of time. I'd love to extract a public promise from you that you'll come back and talk to us about team structure and the arc of AI adoption, even for agencies like that, because I think that would be a fascinating topic. Will you do that?
Yeah, would love to. I can take you through the team structure and how we hired the right people, because that's an interesting one as well, because these jobs didn't exist a year ago, so CVs aren't really the right marker anymore, but we'd love to come back.
Absolutely, that is awesome. That was the answer I was hoping for. Chris, thank you so much. That was so interesting talking to you, and we'll speak soon.
Thanks, EJ. Thanks.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.